not happy with the election result, got to be honest. It scares me how popular the AFD have shown themselves to be. But I was saying to your producer, my husband was very, very sort of cool about it. I was getting really quite upset, but he said, if they did get into power, let them. Because then they will be left completely exposed and you'll see that they have absolutely nothing to offer other than outright racism. They really don't have anything. And I think one of the reasons that they've become so popular over in East Germany is people think that the reunified Germany is really reunified, and it isn't. East Germany is still, or the former East Germany, it's not at the same economic level as the rest of Germany. It just isn't. It's been let down over the last nearly 40 years. There hasn't been the investment in housing and infrastructure. And what they're seeing is millions and millions and millions of euros being pumped into helping refugees while they're still not getting their share.
Sounds familiar.
And that's been a mistake. Yeah, it's exactly the same as in the UK. And it's the same all over Germany. When you're struggling to make ends meet, when you're struggling to pay your bills every month, and you see and you're told on...
Well, it's an unleavened diet. Every single day. Look, we found someone with a hotel room. We found someone with a... And then, of course, even the truth isn't enough. Then they start making stuff up about they get given cars and they get given this. Then you're going to bite, aren't you?
They're all living in the best accommodation and they've all got the latest Apple phones. And it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. But, I mean, there is a problem. There is a problem because we see this... At New Year, girls being assaulted by immigrants, by Syrians, and this business with cars being driven into people at Christmas, and just a couple of weeks ago.
Well, the last one, or the one before the last one, was an Islamophobic attack. I mean, it was a protest at the number of Muslims coming to the...
That hasn't been made nearly as big a deal out of as the last one. Oh, God, it was an Afghan, somebody who'd had their immigration refused. The same tactics that are being used in the UK, the same tactics that are being used in America.
I remember you mentioned the United States, and I remember, I think it was one of Donald Trump's idiot sons who talked about M&Ms and said if one yellow M&M is poisonous, then you'd remove all the yellow M&Ms from the bowl. And it was a while ago. And that is what they mean, isn't it? So, but then why doesn't that apply to criminals of a different background? Why aren't we going to punish everybody who looks like me? Why aren't we going to punish all radio presenters for the depravity of Jimmy Savile?
I'm not an ethnic German. I'm white. I have dual nationality.
You'd be all right, I reckon, wouldn't you, under this rule?
You know what? Funnily enough, I think I'd probably be okay.
You're not Jewish, are you?
I'm not Jewish. No. I might at some point in the future decide to become religious and follow Islam. Yeah. That might put a different slant on it.
And then you'd be on the list. So I mean,
I get into arguments even with family when this anti-immigrant narrative it's really insidious and pervasive, and it's creeping into people. And I have to say to my in-laws, my friends, I'm an immigrant. When you talk about all immigrants, you're talking about me as well.
But they're not. They don't mean you.
But no, they absolutely don't mean me. You know that's not what I mean. I said, well, it is what you mean, though.
That was Brexit. It was the first line, the first morning after Brexit, people ringing me up to tell me their mother-in-law was telling them, I voted to get rid of all the immigrants. That's me, Mum. No, I didn't mean you. I don't mean you. The problem here, and I worry about articulating this too often because I think I'd turn myself off. The problem here is that the idea of a massive economic uptick anytime soon is pie in the sky. The idea of a reindustrialization, and if you look at the west of Germany, you'll know more about this than I do in Stuttgart, it is the former big industrial areas where the AfD is making the biggest gains in West Germany for the same reasons that big industrial areas were pro-Brexit in this country. They're nostalgic for a past that's not retainable, but they believe that it is. You kind of worry about what happens next. If this is the only thing people are being offered, look, the country is declining. My life is not what I want it to be. The richest people in the world are getting richer and richer and richer, but they also own the media now. So, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. So we're not going to be reading about why that's unfair. All we're ever going to be reading about is why we're spending it all on immigrants.
Yeah.
And then what happens? What happens when they're in charge?
Yeah. There's nothing. Where we are here, we're very close to Daimler, who is a huge employer.
Yeah.
But they've been taking a hit from the whole electronic cars market. And that's not the fault of Ali next door, who's come over from Syria 5 years ago. It's not his fault. It's just a changing world. And we're struggling, I think, to keep up with how everything's changing. We've got more and more things like AI are going to have a really big effect.
I went to school in West Germany in the 60s, university in Berlin in the 70s, had lots of friends in East Germany. In those days, I loved East Germany as well. So, yes. And what really always shocked me was how my East German friends did really not identify with any of the shame and guilt that I felt as a West German about Hitler fascism. And I remember when I was 10, 11, we were hoarded at school into the auditorium and shown footage of the liberation of the concentration camps.
Blimey, that's young.
Oh, yeah, I'm still traumatized
of course
from
you
that.
Are, yes.
And, but they didn't do that in East Germany. They were very, very clear that nothing to do with us. We are rooted in the anti-fascist tradition. And they had their point, because most of their leaders after the war in East Germany were people who were persecuted by the Nazis. In Ulbricht lived in Moscow. He had to flee Germany. So there was a strong anti-fascist tradition in the East German ruling classes. So they said, well, it's actually just nasty capitalist aberration, fascism, and we are the alternative Germany, so we don't have anything to do with it. So I think that aspect of shame and guilt, which I carried very strongly and which was part of the reasons why I left Germany in the end.
Yeah.
The East Germans didn't have that, and
and that's not their fault. I mean, I know that's slightly simplistic language, but that is a consequence of the conditioning that you describe, not necessarily a free choice. I mean, there are exceptions. Angela Merkel came from the East, didn't she? So it's not. Obviously, it's not going to be true for everybody, but it's true enough to explain this extraordinary distinction between the West and the East when it comes to supporting far-right politics.
Yeah, absolutely. And all the other points that were made by previous German callers, giving different reasons for the popularity of the AfD in East Germany, they all are true, and they all kind of fit together. And if you piece all those different elements together, I think you have a good picture of why.
And I mean, I think again the chronicling of the stupid is I think important, even if people get offended by it. But when you hear people in this country describing the Nazis as actually being socialists, because they have the word socialist in their title, same people I think believe that if you see Purcell on the side of a bus, it means they sell it on the top deck. But but under that analysis, the shift to communism, or being behind the Iron Curtain, leads East German history to portray Hitler as a capitalist aberration, a capitalist perversion. Yeah, of course it does when you say it out loud. It makes perfect flipping sense, doesn't it? But not enough sense for some people. Reinhardt, thank you. I don't want to ask you the next question, but I'm going to, because looking at this, and certainly the conversation we've had so far today, it's hard to imagine the AfD, as long as they're out of power, it's hard to imagine them diminishing in popularity anytime soon, as long as they can be the eternal heckler, blaming the country's problems or blaming the population's problems on foreigners, not charged with the difficult business of actually governing. It's hard to see them becoming less popular anytime soon. I
must say I'm not that concerned about it, because the anti-AfD feelings and sentiments in West Germany are so strong. It's unbelievable. I mean, there were hundreds of thousands of people demonstrating in the last few weeks, and whenever I speak to German friends, German family that I still have. I mean, the anti-feelings are really, really deep and strong, much deeper and stronger than any anti-Reform UK feelings in this country. So I trust that. Of course,
well, Germans know where it leads.
But to then consider that out of 48 constituencies in East Germany, the AfD won 45, I think. That's obviously concerning. But I'm not, and I do trust the traditional German politicians in their intention to keep the AfD out of any kind of power position.
I wanted to make you aware of another factor which only is true for the GDR, because of course, racism and being anti-immigration is not concentrated on one part of Germany.
Of course.
But the people in the GDR, they had the feeling that they lived in a very peaceful island because they were never asked to decide in any crisis, They never had been asked to decide between different perspectives of future, of possibilities, or of things that included the one and excluded the other. So I think the people in the former GDR are nostalgic for a situation when there was a government who did everything, guided them, and they were not bothered. And they really felt like the world outside did not bother them very much as long as they lived in the GDR,
But we were, we always hear about the Stasi and the, the secret police and the poverty and the food queues. And I don't think that's an inaccurate depiction.
No, they were not satisfied. But they were never asked to solve a problem. You see, it was there were thousands of problems, and they had to solve them in their everyday life. But they felt, with the reunification, they felt like being thrown in a world where suddenly there is nothing to keep them away from poverty. There's nothing to keep them away from war. There's nothing to keep them away from any kind of attack which can come from every kind of corner. And that is the security for which they long. And this is why this AfD or Nazi ideology is so fascinating for them, because there is somebody strong who will do the things for us.
So that's the power of propaganda. So even if I'm queuing for bread and I'm in danger of being locked up if my brother dobs me into the secret police, the propaganda was paternalistic. I felt that the state cared for me.
You did not have to. You had to find a solution in your private life, but you did not have to formulate a solution to the political era. You did not have to propose another kind of work, making the economy working, or making this working, or making the other working. People were really unhappy with lots of things, but today they feel as if suddenly they are put in responsibility for the things.
I haven't thought about this before.
That is too much for them.
I haven't heard this before. So I think you're critiquing totalitarianism, aren't you? And the reason why people go along with it.
They're longing for a friendly totalitarianism because it saves them from feeling responsible for things going wrong. I really agree with Jackie in many ways, but there's one little thing she said, like the housing problem. Please let me tell you, in East Germany, they had so many people moving away. They do not have a housing problem.
Oh, really?
They kind of rebuilt cities, because in the cities there were too many houses empty, so they turned these empty houses into parklands. They do have economic difficulties, but this is, there are towns or cities in East Germany that do much better than some areas in West Germany. It's really different from area to area, But what they really share is a belief that the government can do everything they want, and if this outcome is not good, it's because the government doesn't want to do good. And they feel confronted now with a multiple of questions, with different things. If we do this, then this will be the result. If we do the other, that will be the result. And they feel like it's asked too much of them.
So what I was going to say is that, of course, this anti-immigrant an anti-immigrant sentiment that the AfD is very, very deftly sourcing and very deftly instrumentalizing is nothing new.
No, of course.
So we, as left-wingers, I'm 55, I grew up in Germany. In the 80s, there's this trope of sending back criminal foreigners. That's been going on for years. Yeah. The only big difference, and it's a very worrying difference, is, and Renata said it beautifully. I couldn't say it so eloquently. She really hit the nail on the head. And the problem is that whereas the CDU, which is the German Tories, if you so will, like the Tories, were a broad church, and part of that broad church was a real German national Nazi outlier. But what they always managed to get them in and to appease them somehow. They threw them a bone, some legislature. And usually what they appease them is with economic growth. That doesn't really work with the East Germans anymore because they don't have the same type of commitment to West Germany. And in a way, West Germany was, when you look at what happened after 1990, the East Germans weren't asked. Yeah? So from one day to the next, 1990, October 3rd, they were part of Germany, which was de facto West Germany. Yeah. So they haven't got the same sort of commitment. Now, I'm on national radio, so I've got to be a bit careful. I would say not the commitment to democracy, but that's probably being a bit unfair to all the people there. They certainly don't have the commitment to the West German state, which, of course, the CDU embodies. Yeah, the CDU from Konrad Adenauer, who was the founder of West Germany, they embody the West. So not only can they put two fingers up to foreigners, but they're putting two fingers up to the establishment. Yes. And the real danger is here. So if the same thing happened 25 years ago in Austria, exactly the same thing. Yes, it did. And by the way, there was I lived there at the time. There was a persistent rumor that didn't go away that Jörg Haider was apparently homosexual. Oh, really? So there you go. There you go. And I thought it was a Brazilian, not a Sri Lankan, but you have probably better sources.
Well, I only read it this morning, so I mean, you mean Alice Weidl's partner?
Yeah, Alice
Sarah.
Weidel,
well, she's described as a Sri Lankan partner, the filmmaker Sarah Bossard.
That's probably true.
There might be all manner. I mean, that's the point about the human condition, isn't it, Stephen? Is that most of us are made up of all manner of different ingredients and constituents. So the idea of deporting people who aren't pure enough is even more ridiculous.
Well, probably me. My mum's from Leicester.
Oh, God forbid. Well, we can forgive many things on this programme, Stephen. So it's all there.
Possibly one thing what makes this situation so dangerous is that before they could contain it within the party. I mean, of course, it's a lot more complex. I'm a political scientist. It's more complex. But this is definitely one of the issues, is that they could contain it within the CDU-CSU. Franz Josef Strauss, a very famous Bavarian right-wing politician, said, to the right from me is only the wall. Yeah, yes. So they always wanted it, but that's no longer the case. What centrists like Merz, who really is a centrist, could do is they could buy them off. Now they can't. No. And now you've got 20% out there who, just like in Austria, if you look at migration policies in Austria in the late 90s, you had the Social Democrats, for God's sake. You had the Social Democrats implementing cruel and nasty migration policies just to please the FPÖ. And the same is going to happen here. And it never works. I don't know whether they bring logic to an illogical situation, but it's as if you think you can feed this monster just enough for it to stop demanding more food. And you can't. I mean, because as you say, you begin with calls for foreign criminals to be deported. Yeah. And so what if you do that and the problems that you have used to pretend that they're caused by foreign criminals not being deported don't go away? Well, then you call for foreign non-criminals to be deported, which is where the AfD has already gone. Or you start calling for people of the wrong ethnicity to be deported without mentioning that your own partner might be one of them. Well, Farage has been married to a succession of, or gone out with a succession of foreign women, but they're all right. That's not the kind of immigration that we've got a problem with. Yeah. And that is the big worry. That is going to be a theme, I think, moving forward, is that these economic promises are probably not keepable. So the people who are not motivated entirely by xenophobia and racism are going to have to find a way of conducting this conversation differently from how they currently are. Probably one more thing to that, if I may, James. Yes. I think what is particularly nasty, and you pointed out beautifully in your book, is that we have a sort of 20, 30, 40 years ago when we were young,
yes.
and a long time ago, you could deflate these things with facts a bit. I think that doesn't. They can say whatever they want.
Yeah.
They can say whatever they want. It would be provable on Facebook or on Twitter somehow.